All in favor? Aye. Okay, we'll have a roll call, please.
Alderman Smith.
Yes. Here.
Alderwoman Johnson.
Here.
Alderman Donovan.
Here.
Alderman Jokers.
Here.
Alderman Einman.
Here.
Alderman Rainey.
Here.
Alderman Prince. Here. Alderwoman Anderson. Here. Oh, Mark, you missed that.
I'm like, I'll kill this meeting anytime you want me to.
Thanks for your help.
No problem.
Have a good evening.
Too.
So the first item I'm up for business to talk about is the Troutmans were unable to make, not unable, they just forgot. So they apologized profusely when we were on the phone the next day. So I've asked them to come back in. I think you all still wanted to hear from them on, again, adopting the road that's just to the north of Valley Springs Park. One of the issues that came up that I had looked at, gone down and looked at the park, worried about that part of that park was into the right-of-way. I thought that it wasn't because I saw a couple of stakes that were sitting out in the street or sitting close to that street. But there were some flags, like some marker flags, that were close to the fence. And I did see a pin, but wasn't sure why there was all of these out there. So the stakes looked official. The flags looked like they'd been put there by somebody was marking. It's like when you mark for utilities. No, that was where they found the pins, or found one of the pins, and then did the estimation based on the property description and put the other flag near that. So it does look like the fence and part of that trail is in that road area. So they wanted to come talk to you about that, but also to give their side of this, to talk about why they'd like to see the road taken over by the city. And we discussed it, went through a number of things, but I think it's always best if they're here to explain their part, because I don't think I was the best of it, trying to, I have to be neutral. So, Randy, it's up to you and Mark.
Yeah, the main reason for doing that is we're trying to basically, I'm 68, Mark's going to be 67. We're looking at selling our plant out there at, basically the address is 805 Morrill Street, but it backs up to the Valley Spring Park. We've got some people interested in that plant. There's another building there that we own. It's we got St. Jim Manufacturing. It's owned by a real estate company that father started, and so we've got those two companies there. And basically, what we're trying to do, and there's also room, and there's talk about, and I'm not sure where this would be or when it would happen or if it would happen, adding maybe a couple of other buildings down in there and having tenants in them, or for one reason or another. But that's something that's nothing definite about that at all. So the thing that came up was basically maintenance, quite honestly, on the road, and who would be responsible for it and how that would be divided up, and how that would be taken care of. And so that was our reason. That was one of the reasons we contacted the city to see about doing that. Now, and I put together some numbers. I mean, that road, that entrance road, comes off of a state highway, so the city doesn't have any maintenance to that. But I went back over our taxes for the last couple of years that we paid for real estate and personal property tax. And out of those two buildings, we've contributed $65,000 over the last 10 years that went to the city, just to the city, according to the county tax receipt. And so, I feel like we're not really trying to get something that we don't deserve, that we haven't, somehow in a way paid for or contributed to. But so that's one of the things that I just kind of wanted to throw out there. But we're not positive how, because we'd have to invest quite a bit of money in that road with the cul-de-sac down there, and it would be quite expensive. And so we wanted to get a feel for, if the city would even, want to address that or want to contribute, want to do that. And so, but we're not even positive that is actually something that we're going to end up being able to do anyway, just because of the investment that that it's going to take. There was some mention in the paper about, and I kind of looked at the different comments that were in the paper. There's a mention in the paper about there being a hole in the road. Well, that hole that's on the side of the road is actually from a water line break that had to be replaced going over to the Valley Spring Park. And so the hole is still there. It's kind of, it was filled in, and then it's kind of settled out, and there's still a hole there along the side of the asphalt. But anyway, that's pretty much it. I don't know if you got any questions about. Like I said, at this point, we're not even quite sure how this is all going to fall together, and we haven't. We've got some people that are interested in the building we're in. Nothing's been signed yet at this point that's going to confirm that we're going to actually be able to transfer that facility to somebody else. So it's still kind of up in the air, and we're not quite sure how that's going to end up playing out.
Well, I got a question. The access, what's going to be the access to those buildings then to come down? If you get rid of that street?
Well, we won't get rid of that street. That street will, I guess I'm not sure that I understand.
So I understood we were going to put a cul-de-sac down in there.
It just turns into a city street, and
Okay.
they have to bring it up to our requirements that there be a turnaround for fire
Right.
trucks, plows, so it has to have that improved for us to accept it.
Okay.
Part of the process is, and the reason it's come before the board is, it would go to planning and zoning first and then come to the board, but if the board's going to deny it, I didn't want to waste the time of planning and zoning. It doesn't mean you have to make a decision tonight, but at least if there is, the board is totally against it, then we won't pursue it any further.
Randy, I had one concern. I know you had asked that the city pay for the coring of the road, to make sure that it was up to our requirements and stuff. Of course, and I know over the years there's been thousands of tractor trailers back there, so it's probably a pretty good base and stuff. But I don't know that that would be a good use of the city's taxpayer money, us paying, for that, because it's always been in the past, and I know it is in several other cities where the developer has to have the road up to, up to specs and stuff. Because one, if we would core it and it wouldn't pass, which I don't think that would be an issue, then what happens then?
Oh, okay.
And I know you guys have oiled and chipped and, done some things back there, but, I guess as far as that coming off a state maintenance road, that's not an issue for tying that to a city street?
It would be treated the same as, like the entrance to St. Jude, all the entrances that go into all these other shopping centers. There's certain requirements that you have to meet if you're going to do any improvements next to a state road.
Right. For the fact that we could acquire some additional jobs or something back there, or additional property tax off additional buildings, I don't see an issue myself. I'm just one vote of adopting that as a city street. It's plenty wide, it's flat, it's level. I don't think the maintenance would be that big of an issue, but the fact that we could acquire some additional jobs in this city would be a good deal for all of us.
With the exception, though, you object to the city paying for the core.
Yeah, I think if it's if it's an issue of the road being up to our specs and stuff, I think that should be taken care of by the.
Well, that's something we could.
Right.
Like I said, we'd still have to pay for that cul-de-sac down there.
Right.
And as far as the coring, I tried to figure out. I don't know who does coring. I didn't have any luck finding somebody to get an idea about what that would cost, but. Quite honestly, I guess if we decide to go through with this and it works out for the people that are interested in our property, then we would pay for the coring.
Yeah.
I don't.
The only last concern would be the size of that cul-de-sac back there, because it would be access for tractor and trailers. And I asked Dave just a little bit ago if we had a standard for that. Well, I don't know if we have a standard. I think it would need to be big enough that it would be, a tractor and trailer could make the turn or something in there.
Right. Well,
I don't know if you're going to gate that or fence it or.
Well, right now it's, I don't think that there would be much different change to what there currently is now. We've got a gate as you get into our plant, and quite honestly, that cul-de-sac would not go all the way up to the gate into our plant. It stops short of it by 100 feet or so. And the turnaround would be, well, I don't know, it's kind of there's 801 Morrow Street in that building that sets in there, which is a long, narrow building that has tractor trailer, basically loading docks on the west end and on the east end. And so the turnaround would be right there, and that the truck would end up starting to go back out the road and then back into those stops.
Right.
So that it should be big enough.
Right.
And it would have to be, otherwise it would have to be able to handle those trucks. It really would.
Right.
That would be our goal, to make sure that it works for them. So.
When was the last time that you paved that or oiled and chipped that?
You know, it was paved, you know when it was
Well, I
paved?
don't know. I would say maybe 90.
Right.
I'm guessing around 90, because I think it was tar and chip, and then shortly after, building was built in 84, and then shortly after it was asphalt.
Asphalt.
You know how thick the asphalt was?
Do not know.
What color is it?
But as far as the base, we know it's a lot of things.
Oh, I think so.
Well, that whole area out there around the plant and everything, I mean, we knew we were gonna have heavy trucks in there all the time.
Right.
And so there's a lot of rock base, but as far as knowing exactly what it is.
Right. So as far as that issue with the water valve or the leak,
Well,
that wasn't,
it was a city water line that
I
was
know.
leaking going through the park.
Yeah.
And we were the ones that reported it was leaking. Well, they went on one side, dug a hole, couldn't find the leak. So then they went on the other side, dug a hole, and finally found the leak. Well, it was never repaired after that.
yeah.
So, and we don't,
Yeah, that's-
we didn't cause a stink about it, we just, figured it would eventually be
Right.
fixed, so.
Yeah, and it's been settling, and really you need
Yeah.
to settle first before you ever want to
Sure,
go back
sure.
and put any asphalt or anything in there.
So that's our responsibility probably, isn't it?
I would think.
Yeah, but, the city's the one that does the digging.
That's right, I was trying to get them to do that, okay, fine.
Hey, they didn't do the digging.
But as far as that cul-de-sac, Bob, you said where the trucks, enough room for the trucks to turn around, we did keep an easement for that to make sure that those trucks had enough room to get around. Even though the cul-de-sac wasn't big enough, everything was rocked around that cul-de-sac.
Right.
And I think the cul-de-sac was mainly for when it pushed snow or whatever, there's just a place to turn around and get back out.
Well, that and emergency vehicles, I
There's
think.
a certain amount of right-of-way that has to go in the cul-de-sac, and then a certain amount that's paved.
Right.
So they would have to do what has to be paved, and then dedicate the full right-of-way. So,
Randy, Allen, maybe you want to explain to them about the fence in the city park,
No.
with all that's going on there.
Well, okay. Okay, we started last February with Jerry Bader to have the property surveyed, and we talked to Martin Toma and David about the possibility of donating that piece of land behind Trotman Industrial Court, behind Valley Spring subdivision, and the area that went from, it actually borders on the Valley Spring Park, follows along the creek, and then goes back behind Eric Scott National Vinyl. There's also a water retention basin back there. The goal was, and this was something that Dad had mentioned one time years and years ago, was that it would be neat if there was a trail that went from that Valley Spring Park all the way over to Valley Spring Estates and comes out on that entrance road into Valley. And actually, you could, there's a couple of spots that are kind of tough to get through. One of them is right there at the end of the Valley Spring Park. From there, just down to almost behind Eric Scott. That area there is kind of a rough area. The rest of the area, you've got a water retention basin that has a levee on both sides where you could actually fairly easily put a path on top of it, or tar, whatever you wanted to put. You could put asphalt, or you could put gravel or sawdust or whatever you wanted to put, and would go around and actually enter the woods over behind DNS. I don't know if anybody's familiar where that's at, but anyway, and what runs through there is an easement for the sewer line, and so it's already cleared, and pretty much, except for I used to keep it clear all the time because it was just access for us to get back into some of the property back all the way over to Valley Spring Estates. And so, but now when you can still get through there, but there are dead trees and stuff through there, but it's pretty well clear all the way over till you get over to Valley Spring Estates. There's basically almost a path through there. It's not like it has to be, bulldozed or anything, but there are tree limbs and stuff that are down on it right now. But it would make kind of a neat, you could, it would be a neat way just to get, get away from the traffic and everything and walk through there to get, walk through the woods along Valley Spring and then back over to, Valley Spring Estates. And there's getting to be quite a few homes and everything over there. I think it's just about, there's a few lots left, but they're not very many. They've been building quite a bit back there. But it was always Dad, that was one of the things Dad once mentioned. And it seemed like, and we can't do anything with that property. One of the concerns that Martin and David had was that water retention basin does have to keep kept mowed. And so I contacted all the different companies over there on Troutman Industrial Court about contributing to the maintenance of that, basically mowing it is what it entails 2 or 3 times a year. Nobody really said no. Some of them were like, yeah, that's no big deal, it's not that much. And it was all going to be based on how many acres they had that actually flowed into that water retention basin. And so there were a couple of them that said, well, get back to us when you've got things a little bit more firmed up. And, who would the bill come from? And well, I think in talking to Martin at that time was, maybe the city would actually do the billing to the companies. But, and so anyway, but nothing was ever set in stone. So we got to the point where I talked to David about showing him where that was, and well, we needed to get it surveyed first. And so that survey started back in February, and because of the weather and a number of things, and then the virus, it never really got completed. And there's still a couple of points that haven't been located. A lot of them have, but it's so grown up, with all the greenery and stuff right now that it'll probably be next winter again before we actually mark it. And then if I can get David out there or Happy or whoever, to see kind of where those boundaries are. I think it would. There's kids played down in there along Valley Spring. I've been back in there. There's been forts built, and there's tin and wood and stuff all over the place. There's tree houses. It's kind of, but it's mostly the kids from Valley Spring Estates and things back there. But I think a trail actually could be put through there, and I think it would get a lot of use. But yeah, I don't know. So,
Randy, was that actually built as a detention? Because I know I drove back there, there's actually a levee around it.
Yeah, it's actually built as a...
Didn't the river used to back up in there?
Yeah, actually, when in the '93 flood, we had water on all sides. It actually backed all the way back into the Valley Spring Park.
Right.
Yeah, and so, yeah, it doesn't do that anymore. It does, well, anybody that knows, been in the Valley Spring Park knows that water actually gets up pretty high in there, and it actually, floods, I think, the lower end of the Valley Spring Park. So anyway, to jump back to something else, I guess I got to get off track. The Valley Spring Park, that fence is in fact on our property. The fence and most of that trail that runs parallel with the road is in fact on our property. Jerry Bader found a pin. I don't know if anybody knows where that trellis is. On the east side, there's like a trellis that's kind of falling apart. But anyway, he found a pin underneath that trellis, and then he found another, and then the one out by the road, as Happy mentioned, was kind of a calculated position. But if you sight down through there, the bulk of that path inside that fence is still on our property. The fence itself is on our property too. So what we had Jerry do when he was up there surveying was come out, I don't know if it's 3 or 4 feet from that fence, and put those stakes in that you were looking at to show that as basically everything from there inside to the trail would be what we would donate back to the city, so that we didn't, so that it wasn't on our property, it belonged to the city, and just donate it back, because we've got no use for it. And and I think it would probably work out fine just to not have it on our property. And anyway, I don't know if there's any questions or anything else. I mean, that's pretty much it. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
So again, they said they weren't going to pursue it at the present time, but is there any heartburn on revisiting this or moving forward with it? Not saying we will automatically accept it, but I think we've covered what the considerations are, the necessary considerations are going to be.
I got one question. How many acres would that be that you're talking about donating?
Are you talking about there at the city park?
Yeah, behind the property.
Oh, you mean going all the way over to Valley Spring?
Yeah.
You know what?
Around,
I'm gonna say it's around 14 to 15 acres total.
Wow.
he's got it here on this map.
Well, actually, but this map is not right anymore. This is all changed.
Yeah.
Because, well, we had some, well, I could go into a lot of stuff, you know, you probably really want to hear.
Yeah.
But there's, I think there's going to be left about, roughly about 14 acres.
For here.
I don't know, I think because of the possible job situation and businesses back there, I mean, you know, we provide roads to the rest of the businesses in the city limits and stuff. You know, just my opinion, I think we should, you know, and they're willing to work with us the way it sounds and even donate some additional property to us, but I don't know, I think it's a good deal that we take it over. And solve the fence issue and anything else and stuff, I mean.
Yeah, because if you take the road, automatically it becomes city property, well then there is no need for an adjustment there along the fence. It's again, part of city property. How they located it like that, and they didn't know where the pins were, you know, I don't know. Hard to say.
I don't know, one question for Gary, I mean, do you see any issues maintaining it in the snow or?
No.
Yeah.
Well, you got a place to turn around, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
All right, thank you all. We'll talk to them a little more about it as time goes on, and then they say it come back here, I'm not sure when, but we'll have a couple of things to look at with the right-of-way and with the potential for a park, additional park area. So, second item that we had tonight, we are working on, at the behest of our auditing firm, is to do policies and procedures. So this is a book that we will compile, keep with Sue Schweiss as our treasurer in the city clerk's office. I don't want to go over them tonight, but I knew we weren't going to have them completely ready to send them, or to have them when I sent out the work session, but I wanted you to be aware that you would be getting them and you have a chance to look at them. They've been reviewed by myself, by Pam, by Kim, and by Sue. So I wanted you all.
Sneaky.
I got you. But I want everybody to have a chance to look at these. We will bring, most of them will come back as a resolution to adopt. So one of them will come back, the whistleblower, I want to bring back as a change to our personnel policy. I think it needs to be included in that, not in this policy. So that would be an ordinance to adopt as part of the personnel policy, as a change. So just review them. If you got any questions, you can get hold of any of us. We'll try to answer them. Put our heads together and get you an answer. Do you want to bring this back as a work session item to discuss? Or I'll judge it from the amount of phone calls I get questioning it. All right. Take them home, enjoy. We'll fall asleep pretty quickly. Just a quick budget update. We've completed all of our review with the department heads. So at this point, what we haven't started doing is working on what we think our revenues are going to be for the next year. We're still trying to see what our revenues are at this point. Again, so far everything looks pretty good, but I think we're going to try to go fairly conservative on what we think the revenues will be, and that's across the board, top to bottom. Because I want to make sure that we don't know where things are going to go with this pandemic. If we're going to see a return in the fall, and that's about the time we adopt the budget. If it looks like we're going to exceed what our revenues are, then why not come back with a budget amendment at that point and say, we've got more here, let's add it in and we'll do other projects. But I don't want to adopt the budget that way and then come back and say, we need to amend it for less, or we can't do our projects, because I don't want to set policies saying we're going to do things and not be able to follow through. So Sue and I will sit down and put those numbers together. The plan in July is to also work on a 10-year plan for the departments. Usually about 5 years out is what you can really, really estimate well. After that, you're just looking at repetitive items, making sure that you've got them, but you have them in mind. and maybe thinking a little further out. Such as if we decide to do phases for City Hall, we can plan that out as part of our 10-year plan. We at least put that 3 years out. So we're going to start doing that. You'll see your first part of the budget, I would say end of July, beginning of August. What I work on is a large spreadsheet that shows you beginning what we think what's in our accounts, ending what's in our accounts as of the end of the budget year. It's formulas and calculations, and I think it's an easy way to see all of the departments at the same time and where we start, where we end. So you'll be seeing those pretty soon. With the individual line items, we were pretty much following what our trends were. There were some things that we had to cut. Some things, I should say, a lot of things we needed to move around because of where they were located in the budget. If it's a capital item, there were a lot of things that were small items like parts and bits and pieces that don't belong in the capital. It belongs in a line item because a lot of them were maintenance items. So what you'll see is a lot of capital items, which are the big ticket items, and that's what we're going to have our meeting on in August. We're trying to figure out how to run the city day to day, just keeping the basics, looking at the numbers, keeping those numbers as close to possible as what we think the city can afford. So we'll know what our day-to-day operations are. That's the amount that you'll want in there for another disaster, another pandemic that happens, so that we can run the city day-to-day. But then you'll have the items, so we won't spend all of our revenues that way. Then there's the large capital items. It's going to be your street maintenance. It's going to be what's going on in the water department. It's going to be things for tourism, City Hall remodel. Those are the things you'll get a chance to listen to. We'll make presentations, and you'll get to decide on. And those will then fill out what is our budget for the upcoming year. And then that's what you'll adopt. And we'll have a few weeks to talk about that. So we'll do a work session in between our regular board meetings so that you have a chance just to sit and concentrate on that at a meeting. And then we can come back at the next board meeting if there are changes, and we can go back over those. And then in September, we can do the same thing, either before a regular meeting, before we get ready to adopt. So we'll have a little room in between to make those decisions. Is there any heartburn with this at this point? We're early in the process. I probably started about a month before I needed to, but I wanted to make sure that I had a chance to sit down with the department heads and go through what my philosophies are. And I've tried to explain that a few times so that everybody understands how I go through the budget process and get the numbers to you that are understandable, that will be accurately reflective of what we expect, what we hope to do, what you all hope to do, because you're the ones that ultimately say yes or no. We're doing what we can, and then it's up to the staff. And I've heard you say before, you're thankful for the way they watch their budgets, and they're watching closely. That's again what we'll be doing over the next year, is watching the budgets closely, keeping our expenses down as best we can. So, any questions? You'll have a lot of questions that night. I know you will.
Probably so.
That's all I got for the work session.
Is there any other business? There's no other business, so I'll adjourn this meeting, the work session. Thank you.
Good.